tend to treat women of all ages in my practice. So, right from young girls who are having problems with their periods through to older women who have had their children and their PMS gets so much worse.
So PMDD stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It's an endocrine disorder, so that means it's a hormone issue. It's recently been proved in January 2017 that women with PMDD have a genetic malfunction causing them to have a sensitivity to the fluctuations in sex hormones.
There's PMS, where you feel a bit grouchy, and then there's full-on depression, which never leaves, and then there's this thing that I found called PMDD online, and I know it's an American term, I know it's not very commonly used, but this seems to make sense to me. This seems to be what it sounds like what I've got.
There were lots of things that are going on in a woman's body and lots of different symptoms that were part of this syndrome. So later on, because there are some women who suffer really severely, they've been now lumped together, and that's been titled PMDD, which is the dysphoric disorder. So that's where people get very low mood, where they get not just depressed, but sometimes they have suicidal thoughts. Some women even attempt suicide on a regular basis because their hormones are just so out of control.
At the time, I didn't even know there was such a thing. I didn't know it was related to my hormones. I didn't know anything. I just know I got bad PMS, and everyone else went through it, and mine was probably just a bit worse.
This is a little picture of me I did of me. Really, it was the day that I stood in front of the fridge with the door open, knowing that I had to go and just make their lunch boxes for school, and that was all I had to do. But it just felt like this whole wave of stuff that I just froze, and I didn't know what to do next. And I was saying to my husband, what do I need to do? I need to get something out of the fridge. Even back at uni, knowing that I was having low points, and finding out about bipolar disorder and things like that, and looking at the symptoms of that and thinking, is that me? It's almost me.
The only way I could explain it to someone, it was like going through a bereavement every month. It was literally like you knew no one had died, you knew nothing had happened, but it felt inside. That sadness was like, your best friend had died.
I was completely horrified by the degree of suffering from literally tens of thousands of women. I mean, you cannot imagine. I used to cry opening the post.
There was a lorry coming and I just nearly walked out in front of it. I was so low. I remember having to I wanted to, but I was also coherent enough to know that probably wasn't a good idea.
It was not like, oh, I really want to kill myself. It was more of a, I just wish this would end. I just wish I could just leave. I just wish I could walk away. I just wish I could sit in this car and not have to go back in the house and actually just drive away for a bit. And that was the bit where I started to fear for myself in terms of me as a mother, because I thought, if I ever tell anyone that I've got these thoughts, this sounds really awful and really crazy. And that's terrifying, because if I tell someone, then they'll be like, well, are you actually a fit mother? And are you actually able to be in charge of your children?
And I remember living with my partner, I must have been from when I was 25 to 27, and he said to me, it's like living with a different person every month. It's just like, I don't recognise you. I used to get really down, just have to go to bed and sleep about 18 hours a day. Didn't want him to go to work sometimes, needed someone with me. And obviously in a relationship in your 20s, that's not ideal. And yeah, in the end, he broke up with me saying he didn't want to look after someone.
I remember when my eldest was 2, and I just walked into the room, and I was just, she was a clingy child. She was someone that didn't want to be left alone. She wouldn't just play on her own, and it just got to me one day. And I just remember I came in, and in front of her, I just kicked all her toys, just kicked them around the room. I was just kicking them. And that memory will never leave me, and I think that's something that she would never remember, because she was 2 or 3, she didn't have memories then. But I just remember after that thinking, I've got to get a grip. I've got to be a better mum.
People will be talking about the fact that they were suicidal, the fact that they were beating their kids, that they were alienating their husband. There were some husbands who were sleeping in the garden shed or sleeping in the car. There was just no end to the suffering.
I mean, I went for 17 years not was knowing what was wrong. And that does real psychological damage to people, I think, to think for all that time you are broken and you are useless and you are weak and you are just ill and no one knows what's going on.
There's definitely still a stigma there as well. If you feel like, you mention your cycle, there's just that whole thing of, well, you know, this is
Deal
who
with
you
it.
are and deal with it and you're a woman.
It's really hard work having to fight doctors and GPs who are supposed to know more than you, and yet you're going again and again and again, and no one's putting the pieces together for years.
I've got some stories from women who were told just wacky things by their doctor. You know, one doctor said that his patient should join the Conservative Party and become a magistrate, because that's what his wife did and that's how she handled her PMS. And then there was another one who he told a 19-year-old patient that she should go and have a baby. And she turned around and said to him, well, what shall I do with the baby when I've had it? And he just thumped his fist on the desk and said, you women are all the same. We give you advice, but you never follow it. You know, it's like there are so many stories. But I feel sorry for the GPs. You know, I don't want to say that they're all not doing what they should be doing, because I think they've got limited ability in this area because they are limited by the fact that they haven't got the knowledge.
During that period of 18 months, I was seeing a counsellor who was amazing woman. And she's actually the one that started to piece it together and say, you are far worse, you know, 1 week in 4 when you come and see me, I'm noticing a real difference. And there was one time I had a doctor's appointment before my counselling appointment and went to speak to her about my PMS, and she said that, I hate this one, that I was lucky I wasn't living in the Middle Ages because they'd think I was a witch and they'd burn me.
A doctor's appointment at the end of December for something unrelated, and it was one of those classic, just as I was leaving, I just said, oh, and one more thing, you know, I really feel that I'm really struggling, and I think maybe it's to do with my menstrual cycle, and I think maybe it's happening more regularly and more intensely, and it's the depression isn't going away, and I'm getting very angry with the kids, and I can't cope for 2 or 3 days a month at least, and it's lasting longer each time. I walked out of there with antidepressants. Now that sounds very extreme because a lot of doctors don't do that and shouldn't do that, but it was something that I had mentioned in the past, and I had been trying natural supplements, and it was a big deal for me. It was a big deal for me because I just thought, you know, the whole baggage about antidepressants, people really don't want to go on them, and I thought, fair enough, you know, if this is medicine for the brain instead of medicine for a broken leg or, you know, a stomach ulcer or whatever, then you take it.
But I think it's supposed to be 1 in 20 women of menstruating age suffer from PMDD, so doctors should know about it. The final end game really with PMDD is a total hysterectomy with bilateral oophorectomy, so that's everything out including your ovaries. I'm 38 and they're still trying to keep that on hold for as long as possible. 920 women on the support group, and we're getting probably about 6 or 7 requests to join every day now. It used to be that every month, and now it's every day. So people are hearing about it.
The issue is that people don't know how to handle you. They don't know when they see you next week whether you're going to be, you know, normal, jumpy, full of beans, or you know, your old moody self that's just barely clinging on.
It makes me sad looking back because I wasted so many years. Just that empathy and knowing what was going on would have really helped, rather than just being left. You are literally just left to suffer on your own. You know, the online support groups have been amazing for me. I've learned pretty much everything I know from the support groups and sharing information with other women and peer support. I think it's really vital for women to have that, to be able to talk to other women in a sort of a safe, sort of closed environment.
We found between those studies where we'd measured nutrient levels, 50 to 80% of the women had low levels of magnesium, and other nutrients like B vitamins, iron, zinc, calcium, essential fatty acids, vitamin D were also often in short supply. And what we deduced at the end of the time was that when we taught women how to get their nutrients back into an optimum range, it had a normalising effect on their brain chemistry, which then influence their hormones positively. So coupled with making some good dietary changes, so taking out of your diet things that are going to either impede the absorption of good nutrients or things that may make you feel worse because you're just junking out on loads of chocolate and sweet stuff, and that's not going to be a good outcome. And doing some exercise as well. So just sort of being really kind to your body and helping you to get your body back into good hormone balance, good nutritional balance. The symptoms disappeared.
I was diagnosed with PMDD January this year, 2017, and I was really surprised by the lack of support and the lack of awareness around these strictly female issues. Along the journey of making my documentary, I met Marion, who has offered to help cure me of my PMDD. So over the course of 6 months, I'll be going through these treatment options and reflecting on the process and seeing if it works for me, really, see if I can be PMDD free.
Women fill in questionnaires and diet diaries all the way through. They have regular consultations, and the success rate is based on the degree to which they follow the programme. So when I met Alicia, she wanted me to talk about PMDD, and I think she was a bit surprised when I said to her that I didn't feel that she needed to suffer with that for the rest of her life. So we then had a conversation, and I felt so incensed that women like her are left to suffer, are labelled and told that this is their lot for life, that I wanted to, I felt like helping her and challenging her to get better. So this has kind of evolved into that.